Hey everyone, Kevin here with Victory 4x4, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how to install a set of our Blitz sliders on your FJ Cruiser. So to get started, you're going to want to lay these out somewhere you can work with them, on a bench or a blanket on the ground, a piece of cardboard, whatever it may be in your case. And you're going to have a little bit of assembly to do before you can put them on the vehicle. We're going to start right up here with our rock lights. Now these rock lights are going to come individually boxed with all the hardware you're going to need. Just be sure before you install these that you remove the blue plastic cover. And then this will simply sit right here on the inside of the slider. Then take the black plastic washer, one button head bolt from the outside to align that. Washer and a nut on the inside. Once both of those are loosely installed, you can snug that up, just making sure to keep the light sitting flat to that inside face. And then you can move to the other side and do the same thing. After you have those rock lights installed, you can grab your logo plates and you'll install one just like this on each end of the slider using 1/4 inch button head bolts and serrated flange nuts. Go ahead and start all 3 bolts and nuts in that logo plate before tightening anything up. And for that, you're just using a 5 32" hex. Next, we're ready to get our slider mounts installed. For this, you just need to know that these boats are symmetrical. It doesn't matter which one goes on which side until you have these mounts on. So this is going to be our front mount. Here I'm working on building a driver's side. This one's got an arrow that's going to face toward the front of the vehicle. And I'm going to mount it in the centermost holes on this slider. I'm just going to hold it up there, line it up, and get that in place using this 1/2 inch button head hardware and serrated flange nuts. Now this one's going to be our rear slider mount. It's also going to mount to the centermost set of holes on this back bracket. Again, using the same 1/2 inch button head hardware. And these are side specific. Just make sure your rear mount angles from the slider forward toward the frame rail of the vehicle. After you have all that slider mount hardware just loosely installed, go ahead and leave those loose for now until we get it mounted on the vehicle, so you have a little bit of front to rear adjustment in these mounts. One thing we do want to note here, this bolt looks like it can get just a little bit tight. Just know you're not going to get a socket in there, but you can easily get to that with your 5/16 Allen wrench. So now that you got your sliders installed and ready to go on the vehicle, you need to come up here to the factory frame rail and prep this for installation. For that, first off, if you've got any factory steps already installed, you'll need to remove those, get those out of the way, throw them in the garbage, whatever you want to do. Next, parking brake cable. There's going to be one of these bolts and brackets on each side toward the rear. You can just remove that and let it hang. Our slider mount is going to slide right up behind that. After that, just make sure that you don't have any plastic clips or plugs in any of these holes that are going to be behind the slider mount, so that you have a nice flat surface to bolt that to right here. Next, this front mud flap is going to need to be removed. For that, it's just going to be 3 fasteners here in the wheel opening and 1 right here on the back side. Those can be removed using a 10mm socket. With that out of the way, we can get the slider up in place and get a couple bolts started. At this point, with just a couple bolts holding this slider in place, you can grab the rest of your 8mm flange head hardware and get these going in to all of the factory threaded holes, and then just lightly snug them up to hold that all in place. After that, you'll take 2 of the 3/8 self-threading bolts and install these into the 2 rearwardmost holes on this front mount. After that, using your bracket as a guide, you'll need to drill a 5/16 hole here, as well as the empty hole on your rear slider leg, so that you can use another 3/8 self-threading bolt to secure that bracket in place. So for that, I'm just going to come right to the center of this hole, mark it with a center punch, and then I'll use a couple smaller drill bits and work my way up to that 5/16 hole, just so that we can keep everything nice and centered. After you have that hole drilled, simply install one of the 3/8 self-threading bolts, just like we used on the back of this mount. Now back here on the rear mount, we're going to do the same thing. And then again, just like the front, now that we've got our 5/16 hole drilled, we'll take a 3/8 self-threading bolt and run it into that hole. So then at this point, you have all your slider mount hardware installed through the brackets into the frame. You'll want to come back to the outside out here and push up on that, either with the help of a friend or using a jack. And then you can come back in and tighten up. Once you're happy with the placement, you'll come back in and tighten up the side mount hardware into the frame, followed by the bottom hardware on your front and rear brackets. Now at this point, if you haven't done so already, just be sure to come back right in here above the rear slider mount and reinstall the parking brake cable bracket to the frame, making sure that you nest that tab on that bracket down into the slider bracket. Okay, so the only real difference here on the passenger side is going to be on the back of this front mounting bracket. You're going to use 3 of the self-threading bolts here, and then you'll need to drill all 3 holes and run 3/8 self-threading bolts into the bottom as well. After you have all that tightened up, you can grab your 5/16 hex socket as well as Allen wrench, make any minute front to rear adjustment that you might need to of this slider boat, and then tighten those down to the slider legs. One little tip here, if you are having any troubles with any of the nuts spinning, you can reach in through these high lift holes, either get a wrench on it or hold that nut just enough that that serrated flange will bite, and you can tighten those bolts down. So the last thing you're going to need to do is wire up those rock lights to either a switch or the dome light, whatever you choose, and you're ready to hit the trails. If you guys have any questions about these or any other product here at Victory 4x4, feel free to give us a call, 269-459-8447, or shoot us an email, info@victory4x4.com.